Hi, everyone. My name's Liz Hamilton. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Worcester. And I'm really thrilled to be able to talk to Dr. Maddie Castiel, our Commissioner of Health for the City of Worcester, and also a longtime supporter of the Boys and Girls Club of Worcester, where she was once one of our esteemed board members. Thanks so much for your willingness to talk to us today on a Saturday morning. I know how busy you've been. I know this whole week you were providing vaccinations at shelters. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. One of the reasons why it's important for me to come and talk to you and the people at the Boys and Girls Club is because we need to get as many people as we can to get vaccinated. So we're saying about 80% of people at least. Number varies sometimes between 75 to 85% of people vaccinated, and why that's important is because it's what we call herd immunity. It's getting everybody, or at least most of our community together. The virus won't have a place to go. So if that many people are vaccinated, we may be able to eradicate, this virus. The other piece that I always hear is that people, of course, people are hesitant about getting the vaccine.
Yes.
It was made too rapid, right? What we call the warp speed. And one of the things to make people feel comfortable is that this platform has been around for almost 20 years. I mean, we've been doing it with SARS-1, now SARS-2. SARS-1, now COVID-19. But it's a platform that has been worked on for some time. And then we have a pandemic, which is affecting, worldwide. And so everybody was on board to put this together. The great thing about this vaccine is that it's not a live virus. So most other vaccines are sometimes a live virus or what we call an attenuated virus, which is a virus that has a little bit less infectivity. This has nothing to do with that. So it's really a taking a copy of the virus, the DNA of the virus, sending it into messenger into our cells. So so what we send to our cells, the protein that we send to our cells, is really a protein that acts on the spike protein. So when we look at the virus, and most of you have seen what it looks like, it has some spikes on it, and what we send to the cell acts on those spike proteins. When people talk about all the different that we're finding, different variants, whether it's South Africa or whether it's, England or wherever, it's still the changes are happening in the spike protein. As of now, all the vaccine acts against all of them. They're still looking at some of the South Africa pieces. I think the reality of what's happening is that it has a higher transmissibility. So if you get one of those variants, they're much more easier to somebody else to catch it. And also what they're saying is that the outcomes of, it's a more severe disease of COVID if you have one of those. And so the idea of getting everybody vaccinated is a huge piece that we need to do. So that warp speed that people talk about, that they're not trusting of that, it's the safest thing you can do. So I actually in September went on the Pfizer trial, and they could either give you placebo or they could give you the vaccine. And a couple of us did it really to, in particular because I'm Latina, to get the Latino community to understand about the vaccine. And there's a history of people sort of not being, research and things that have done in the past that have truly been inappropriate. And so yes. How do we tell our community what are the things that we can do? And so we took the vaccine in September. You almost knew that you had the vaccine because you do have some symptoms. And, if you were injecting saline into me, you wouldn't feel what I felt. So you get some swelling of your arm. You may get a little redness of your arm. You may, I worked, I got it at 7 a.m. I worked that day. I started to feel kind of tired by the end of the day. My muscles were hurting. I went home and I just felt really just didn't feel good. Almost like if I had the flu, but I had no symptoms in that sense, just tired. Um, and then I took some Motrin, and I went to bed, and I felt fine the next morning. Um, um, the second shot, if it's the Pfizer, is 3 weeks later. And again, same symptoms for the second shot. So, as most of you know, there are two vaccines that are out right now. And the Pfizer, you get their second shot in 3 weeks. So, the Moderna, which is the other vaccine that's approved for emergency use, it's every four. It's in 4 weeks. So right now, at this moment, there isn't a vaccine that's one shot only. So we have to make sure that everybody gets both shots. So they say that with the first shot, there's about 50% immunity, that maybe you're covered. Um, and then with the second shot, there's 95% with the Pfizer, and the Moderna is 94.5. So what does that mean? It means that, um, 95% of people that get it are covered. The other 5%, we don't know. And so they say 1 in 20 may not be covered by the vaccine. Still, 95% efficacy, or 94.5% efficacy. It's better than any vaccine that we've had. So, but once we get the vaccine, we all have to continue wearing our masks. We all have to socially distance. We all have to do everything we're doing exactly the same. And the only way things are going to be different is if we say, again, 85% of people, 80 to 85% of people get vaccinated. That's when we're going to be able to say, now we can eradicate the virus. Otherwise, we continue exactly as we were. And people say, well, what the heck, I'm getting vaccinated. That's the whole goal, is to get the entire community vaccinated. So hopefully that's a good piece. The other one that they're looking at, and I'm blanking out of the name, I think it's Johnson. I think they haven't been approved yet. And when they're approved for emergency usage. So people say, well, they're not even fully vetted yet, so why should I get it? It is vetted for safety. So most problems happen within the first 2 months of the vaccine. So I've already had it since September. Nothing happened within the first 2 months. And again, there were at least 30,000 people who were on this trial who got the vaccine, who also no other symptoms were seen. A lot of times people say, well, I heard somewhere that there's Bell's palsy. People get Bell's palsy, or they get this kind of weakness or that kind of weakness. And you have to think about that. Things happen. So Bell's palsy happens in a certain percentage of people in our community, or anything else. None of it has been associated with the vaccine. And you have to think about that the vaccine now has gone all over the world. The only thing that they have found is people who have allergic reactions, right? People who have what's called anaphylaxis. So anaphylaxis is, you have an allergy, whether it's to bees or anything. And if you get stung by the bee, you can't breathe anymore. Your throat shuts up, and you need epinephrine. These people walk around with what we call an EpiPen, right? And so those are the people that we're concerned about, but those are also the people that need to be vaccinated. So we do that. We have an EpiPen available, and we will be able to do that. They may want to do it in some places where the ambulance is standby, in a hospital, or, for example, when we do vaccines at the senior center, there is EMS on standby, but we always have an EpiPen with us. So to date, I have not had, and I have allergies. A lot of my staff who have been out with me vaccinating also have allergies, and nobody had any problems whatsoever. And again, no problems with the vaccine. So the way that they're rolling out the vaccine is really, and it comes from the CDC to the states, and they, the states can do however they want to, how they want to manipulate it. And one of the things that the state has done is to really put an equity lens when we give the vaccines. And so when you look at phase 1, which we're coming to an end of phase 1, it was, for example, you started off with all the hospital staff, right? So all the docs and all the nurses and everybody else. But the idea was that you get that everybody else, that the person who goes into a COVID positive room to clean or to bring food to the hospital, those are the, that's a lot of times that tends to be people of color. And so we want to vaccinate everybody in that sense. In spite
Absolutely.
of all that this is made with an equity lens, um, there is only 4% of people, of people of color who have gotten the vaccine to date, compared to 46% of people in the white community to date. So anyway, people have not gotten the vaccine. And again, in spite of conversations, in spite of knowing how safe it is, and thinking about, you're not the guinea pig. We're not trying the vaccine on you. Think about all the doctors, all the nurses, everybody who's gotten it to date. And the most important thing is that when you get it, even though we're till everybody gets vaccinated, we're still doing everything the same. But it's going to give us the opportunity to be with our families. It's going to give us opportunities to be with our friends. We can go out and eat again and feel comfortable eating. We can go shopping. We can go back to normal. And that's what we have to really think about. And people say sometimes, well, I got it and I had no symptoms. I was perfectly fine. And so I'm okay. I don't need to worry about it. The reality is also that not to be selfish. It's
Yes.
about everybody else, because you can still transmit the disease and not even know that you have the disease. So the other piece about that people think about, that they're okay, they got the virus and nothing happened to them. There's also what's called the long hauler syndrome. And that's actually people who get COVID, whether they're asymptomatic or not, can have long-term effects. They can have that fogginess in the head. They can, what we call cognitive changes, or they can have, muscle weakness. And it's, and it's, people worry about that, and people worry about this generation with the side effects of what can happen with COVID, what's going to happen to our economy, what's going to happen to our community in that sense if we have that much disability that may happen from COVID. So there are no downsides to getting the vaccine. There is a lot of downsides to getting COVID. And so when you get the vaccine, people say, will I be able to transmit the disease? As of now, we don't know if you may be a carrier and you're able to transmit the disease. And that's why you continuously wear a mask. And again, when everybody's vaccinated, it will be a different story. So who can get it? Anybody can get it. You think about, I think some of your questions was somebody with cancer. Absolutely, somebody with cancer can get it. You will do it with your oncologist, and they will work on how you do it. I don't, they did not study kids who were 16 and below at Pfizer, and I think it was 17 and below with Moderna. And so we have no data on kids, but there's nothing in the vaccine that's going to harm a kid. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends the vaccine. They also didn't try it on pregnant women. The American Academy of OBGYN, the American Academy of Maternal Fetal Medicine recommends the vaccine. So if there's any questions with any of that, if somebody is pregnant and wants to worry about whether, I'm breastfeeding and is that going to cause a harm?
Yes.
Those are the things to talk about with your OBGYN, and make sure that they're comfortable and truly that those academies, those experts in the field, feel that it is safe. Again, you're not injecting a live virus into anybody or a partially live virus into anybody. And so it does not cause the same things that we've had in the past with previous vaccines. And always remember that we ended a lot of issues in the past with vaccines. I mean, think about all the diseases, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, smallpox, all of these things. We're in this position now, and we need the entire community to come together. It's one of the things that we all love about Worcester, is that we all help one another. We all care about one another. We all try to do that. This is the time that we should do it. Whether you're 20 years old and said, I didn't get, any problems with it, we need you to get that vaccine, because you're going to protect me. You're going to protect your grandmother. You're going to protect your parents. And that's the key of why we need to do it. So again, how we're almost finishing up phase one, which was all the people who worked in the hospitals, right? So all of them, I think that UMass already gave 14,000 vaccines through their hospital and through all their hospital staff. Then, we go through the long-term care facilities, the nursing homes, the rest homes. As you may know or remember, back in March, those were our highest numbers. And again, why was those the highest numbers? It was because also, who goes and works there? It's a lot of them. A lot of the PCAs are or who work in nursing homes are people of color. And
Right,
so they're going from place to place to work, and they're
right,
bringing and everybody who works there in reality is bringing the virus into these sites. So they put things in place during that time to be able to test more frequently. But most importantly, they're the ones who are going to get the vaccine, and so are the people who work there. And so is any home health care agency will get the vaccines now because they're going into your home. And so
absolutely.
those are the people that are ahead. Congregate living, anybody who can't isolate, shares bathrooms, shares kitchen, those are all part of it. Shelters, and say, well, why are we doing shelters? Again, people who are not able to isolate, they're sharing a
Right,
space. And not only that, they're walking out into the community. And the majority of them have been asymptomatic, which is a great thing for that. If at least if they're going to get COVID, but
right,
for the same token, they're also spreading the disease. And
right.
so to be able to control that piece is important, to be able to give them the ability to be safe in that type of a setting is also important. And then in the last phase really becomes jails were also part of it. And then the last phase is the psychologists, all the therapists, anybody, the dentist, all of those who were may have been working from home as we're talking now, or had been working with their patients, and again separated and all that. But now, if they're vaccinated, more appointments, it's easier to be able to do. And therefore, get our clinicians out to start seeing our kids who need it desperately from almost a year that we've been at this process. So phase two, which we're coming in at the beginning of February and goes through April. Um, and they've changed it a couple of times, and now it's anybody who's 75 and older, anybody who has two comorbidities, and two comorbidities can be diabetes, obesity, and there's a whole list, and you can go through the Mass DPH website, but there is a whole list of them. Most people may have, especially at my age, we end up with a couple of comorbidities. But so that's because we know that if they carry a burden of disease and they get COVID, they're the ones who are going to end up in the
Yeah,
ICU.
absolutely.
Um, then there is all the folks who are in Worcester housing and the elderly and disabled side. So that's phase one. Phase two then is where a lot of your folks are going to be part of, is
Right,
the K through 12, it's anybody who's youth workers, anybody who's working with people in the community. You're talking about the person in the grocery store who's front facing with people. So all of those people will then get vaccinated. And then after that is adults who are 65 and over. And why? And people say, why aren't adult, 65 and older on the top of the list? The reality, if they're 65 and older and isn't in one of the places that we talked about, they have a place to shelter in. They have a place where they can quarantine, or they can just isolate from what's happening. And I know that that's a difficult thing, but they have the ability to do that while other people don't have the ability to do that. So the last phase is individuals with one comorbidity out of phase two. And then we're thinking that in April through June, it's everybody. So right now, the city is working to put a mass vaccination site in Worcester. You've heard them. They're at Gillette Stadium. They're in different stadiums. There's hopefully going to be one in Worcester where we could do that. Hopefully your primary care doctors will have vaccines. And also Walgreens, you name it. Every store, they're planning on putting it in grocery stores so that people can go in and get the vaccine. So I don't know if I've answered most of your questions,
I
some of your
think
questions.
you did. Let me just look one more time, but just
Mhm.
so everyone knows, our team member sent Dr. Maddie Castiel about 30 questions, and I think you covered a lot of them, but let me just check one more time to see if we
Okay,
got everything. I really appreciate you spending time with us.
my pleasure.
Um, So I guess some of them were wondering how long will once you have the vaccine, will you be fully protected after you've had the two dosages?
Right.
Like, does it take
So,
time?
some papers say it could be up to 3 years, 2 to
Oh,
3 years. Some are saying we don't know. We really don't know.
okay.
Um, if we call it the worst that could happen, the worst that could happen is that we need, every year a booster like we do
Flu
any
shot?
other vaccines, or we need it just like the flu vaccine, or it goes together in that sense that we do it in every year. So we're the minimum we're hoping is 1 year,
Okay.
and the maximum we're looking at is 2 to 3 years. So
Wow.
either way, I don't care, as long as we are able to go back to our normal lives and I can actually sit with you and talk to you about this in person, makes a big, big difference. So
Right.
that's what I'm looking forward to do.
Absolutely. And then some people had concerns regarding there's a lot of protocols that seem like have to be followed in order for the vaccination to be effective. And one is storing at a low temperature. And I guess they were asking, is that something that can be monitored? Do you feel that that's happening? I think a lot of it happened with that one story that was
Yeah,
out.
just recently,
Yeah,
2,000 vaccines were
yeah.
lost because somebody for
Took them out of
apparently
the,
tripped the
yeah,
cord and then the alarm didn't go off. So,
right.
um, you know, places like the hospitals have the, first of all, for the Pfizer, that you need to have 70 degrees and 70 degrees below zero,
Right.
to keep the vaccine. So they have those freezers. We've been getting the Moderna, which is still frozen, and then given to us, and then you have to let it defrost, and so you
Okay.
plan accordingly when you take the vaccine out of the freezer. You have about 6 hours, when you've actually opened the vial, to use up the vaccine. So what ends up happening a lot of times is that we may plan for, I'll give you an example. We went to Abby's house yesterday, and we were planning for 120 vaccines and only got 80 from Abby's house. So I had to get 40 people who are in the same phase to
Right.
be able to come in and get a vaccine. And so you can't travel with the vaccine. So I can't go, take the vaccines back to DPH. I have to finish it there.
Okay.
And I can only go to one place. So the handling of it is very different. And so, we sometimes have a list, or we try to put a list together of people that we can call if we have some leftovers. Our goal is never, ever to not use. We call it liquid gold. And so we want to make sure that
Absolutely.
we are giving it to every single person that needs it.
All right. And then, one of the questions was about children. When will children? So you think that would be phase three? So
Correct.
that between April and June, is that what you said?
Yeah, April and June.
Okay. Um,
And we would probably have more of the data by then. They are right now doing trials
oh,
on youth, and I think it's maybe both Pfizer and Moderna are looking at, depending on which vaccine. I think it's Pfizer that's 16 and below. They're doing like 12 to 16,
okay.
and then they're going to do a trial of 0 to 12.
Hmm.
But again, it's recommended.
Absolutely. No,
Mhm.
absolutely. Um, you already talked about allergies. You really should talk to your doctor, but so far you feel
Any allergies, anything, I'm alert, unless you have an anaphylactic reaction to something where you eat peanuts and you have, your throat closes up and you can't breathe. Those are the ones we worry about. Again, does not mean that you can't get the vaccine. It just
right.
means you need to be monitored. So a lot of people who have certain things that they're concerned about, whether it's, I have allergies to a lot of stuff. And so they're concerned about it. We monitor them for 30 minutes.
Okay.
Most people after the vaccine get monitored for 15 minutes. If there's any concern, they're always monitored for 30 minutes.
Okay. Very good. What if you have kidney disease and you have a solitary kidney?
I would hate to lose that kidney with COVID. So vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate.
Nope. Very good. But I was asked to ask you that specific
No
question.
worry. No, no, I get it.
And then for side effects, you said there was some soreness in the arm, and maybe some mild flu-like symptoms, but nothing in your experience, and you actually took.
I took it, and everybody else who I know has taken it. What I recommend when you get the vaccine is to take some Tylenol or some Advil, and afterwards, or some people have done it beforehand. And then you may need it at night. Some people absolutely feel nothing, maybe a little heaviness of the arm. And some people get some, really feel fatigued and really need to go home and go to bed. All of it lasts 24 hours. And then again, repeated, whether Moderna or Pfizer, 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, you will get the same similar symptoms. Sometimes with Moderna, you might feel a little bit more on the fourth,
After the.
than the fourth week, right, for the second shot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're saying that when you've been providing vaccination, it's been the Moderna one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so that would be probably what we in Worcester would be receiving is the Moderna one.
That's hopefully what we'll be getting, only because at least for us who travel, that would be the easiest ones.
Right.
Places that have the freezers. So if UMass is part of a mass vaccination site, or St. V's is part of a mass vaccination site, they may be able to use Pfizer
Pfizer.
if they have it, and so maybe
Mhm.
that's what we'll be
Mhm.
doing. It Both vaccines are excellent, and
Mhm.
it's more the storage and being able to do that. And again, all freezers have alarms, everything. They're really set up to do this. What happened with that one? And again, once you see that, then you've lost the 2,000 vaccines. But that's again an anomaly.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you for spending so much time with us today. And thank you also for always having that equity lens